So if you're clicking on this video, chances are that you already know the basis of the news that I'm about to talk about, which was this crazy surprise that we got this morning that Square Enix has decided to sell a lot of their Western studios and intellectual properties to a company called Embracer Group. And I just wanted to just talk about it. So let's dive right in. We're going to start with reading this press release from Embracer Group. And I'm just going to read a couple of these highlighted points. Embracer Group has entered into an agreement to acquire the development studios Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, Square Enix Montreal, and a catalog of IP, including Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief, Legacy of Kain, and more than 50 back catalog games from Square Enix Holdings. Now, it's important to note that this only includes 3 studios, as they said. So, a lot of the studios that are influencing Square Enix's Japanese development, JRPG, Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, and everything else they have in the pipeline are not included in this. It looks like they were intent on selling off a lot of the Western developers that they had acquired in the past. So, of course, Crystal Dynamics, best known for, or probably most popularly known for Tomb Raider, Eidos Montreal, most recently the Guardians of the Galaxy game, but they're probably most well known for Deus Ex. And Square Enix Montreal is probably a company that many people have not heard about. Obviously, a company that's now going to have to change their name. They're most known for mobile development. So they worked on a lot of the Go games that were Go games that were on mobile. Hitman Go, Tomb Raider Go. I think there was even a Deus Ex one, but I might be wrong. Honestly, those games are pretty fun. If you've never played Tomb Raider Go and Hitman Go, I was addicted to those games. Those games were awesome. And then, of course, they have the back catalog games, and we'll go through that a little bit later. In total, the acquisition includes 1,100 employees across 3 studios and 8 global locations. The total purchase price amounts to USD 300 million on a cash and debt-free basis to be paid in full at closing. And honestly, obviously, that sounds like crumbs, crumb cake, pennies on the dollar, and it's going to look like even more of a steal when I move on to talking about how much Embracer Group has paid for other studios and IP that we know of. I'll skip some of that jargon and we'll just jump into the transaction subject to various regulatory and other external approvals. They shouldn't have any issues and is expected to close during the second quarter of Embracer's financial year 22-23, which is July through September 2022. This is when they expect the deal to actually be closed. An announcement like today is more like, probably the paperwork is being signed sort of thing. So we're going to have to wait a little bit until this is 100% official. Let's go down a little bit. I want to read some of these blurbs in here. The acquisition brings a compelling pipeline of new installments from beloved franchises and original IPs, including a new Tomb Raider game, which we found out about just a few weeks ago during Epic's Unreal Engine 5 announcement. They did confirm that a new Tomb Raider is not only being developed, but it is being developed using Unreal Engine 5. Embracer has been particularly impressed by the studio's rich portfolio of original IP, housing brands with proven global potential such as Tomb Raider and Deus Ex, as well as demonstrating the ability to create AAA games with large and growing fan bases. There are compelling opportunities to organically grow the studios to maximize their commercial opportunities. And look, let's be honest, when it comes to this purchase price of $300 million, like it's great to have that intellectual property, but I think it's also, actually, I will say, I think it's much better to the understanding that you're getting amazingly talented teams. As I said, even Square Enix Montreal, I would call it a talented team because those Go games were perfect examples of taking popular console IP and moving it over into a mobile game. It was just really, really well done. Like I said, it operated like a mobile game, so it was like isometric. You could only move 5 moves or something like that. And obviously part of the challenge was trying to complete each level in the lowest amount of moves. But then of course we saw what Crystal Dynamics was able to do with Tomb Raider's reboot. And we've seen what what Eidos Montreal has been able to do lately with the absolutely amazing Guardians of the Galaxy. So just for the teams alone, I feel like this is a good deal. But when you add on top of the fact all these intellectual properties that they're purchasing, wow. The portfolio of IP consists of iconic franchises appreciated by critics and players alike. For example, two original IPs, Tomb Raider and Deus Ex, have sold AAA units of 88 million and 12 million respectively. Embracer sees an opportunity to invest in these franchises, as well as the additional acquired IPs such as Legacy of Kain, Thief, 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 and other original franchises. The acquisition also includes the continued sales and operations of the studio's more than 50 back catalog games. And obviously, we don't know what the full list of those games are outside of the ones that they have named. But obviously, those games are considered small enough that they didn't need to sort of be a part of the big announcement. Some people were talking about maybe Sleeping Dogs. The fact that Sleeping Dogs wasn't listed here and it was a critical commercial success, even though there's no sequels, kind of makes me feel that this was not part of the deal. And finally, Embracer believes there will be an increasingly strong demand for high quality content, including AAA single player games over the decade. We aim to continue working with leading platforms and license holders and to form deeper strategic relationships with a handful of leading companies in the industry. So Embracer is making this purchase and they're kind of making a bet that there will still be high demand for AAA single player games. A bet that I'm sure every single gamer out there will be more than happy to take, because as you know, as much as we talk about multiplayer gaming, free to play games, games as a service, and all that stuff, in the last few years, we've noticed one of the biggest problems with games as a service, and that's supply and demand. If you're going to create a games as a service, you have to be able and ready to meet that demand or supply that demand with consistent content, because gamers have become more and more fickle. Their attention span is not as long as it used to be, where just a game on its core, just for the mechanics, they're just not enough to keep a multiplayer game going. So for that reason, I think a lot of companies, and it's great that Embracer Group is bringing this up, are looking at AAA single player games as something that is not going to die out. We've heard this so many times about these single player games going away. They just kind of never have. And honestly, they sort of never will. So what else does the Embracer Group own? So as of May 2022, Embracer Group has 10 operating groups consisting of 124 internal studios and publishers. And the overall group had a total of about 14,000 employees in 45 countries. This is a huge, huge company. So let's talk about what are some of the things that they own? So Saints Row is one of the biggest franchises that they own. I'll go through a few of them, but they actually are also the parent company of Gearbox. That's the company behind Borderlands. Well, I'm about to tell you, in the shadow of $300 million to pay for this group is bonkers, but they paid $1.3 billion to acquire Gearbox and everything they currently have, which was Borderlands. And I can't remember what else they had at that point in time. They also paid $450 million for a company called Aspera Media. $450 million. That company was basically a porting company. So it goes to show you how much of a steal $300 million is. They also own the rights to Darksiders and a bunch of other franchises. I would spend a whole lot of time trying to go through everything else. Now, what is Square Enix keeping? They confirmed that they are keeping Outriders, Just Cause, Life is Strange. I'm going to guess that they also kept Sleeping Dogs, although I could be wrong. And then JRPG IPs such as Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts are some of the IPs that they're going to keep. Even though they could say that they are going to keep them in the press release, they didn't sell those. So the next question is, why did Square Enix choose to do this? So I want to go for this Steven Sotilo tweet where he says a few more details. Square says studios generated about $200 million in revenue last year, but less than $8 million in operating income. Peanuts. Okay, so what this means is that Square Enix realized we're investing a lot of money. AAA gaming is only going to get more expensive in the future, especially for a game that you're basically only able to sell once, which is why you see some of these companies moving towards games as a service or free-to-play multiplayer games, games that have much more of an upside because you can continually keep on monetizing them. Embracer expects AAA games from these studios starting 2 years from now. And then he also confirmed something that I feel like should be obvious. Perfect Dark Crystal deal continues. Obviously, those deals are already signed. It's not like something that they would ever pull out of. But the other answer to why did Square Enix do this lies in this press release. So this was from Square Enix, and look at these highlighted parts. In addition, the transaction enables the launch of new businesses by moving forward with investment in fields including blockchain, AI, and the cloud. Blockchain, a gamer's favorite word. So a lot of people are asking, should gamers be worried right now? And honestly, if you're a Square Enix fan, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, I would be kind of worried. Now, I don't think that this means that Square Enix is going to turn into the new Konami and they're just going to stop making AAA games. But I think what's going to happen is going to be seeing a lot less of them releasing every now and then. It hasn't been a secret that Square Enix has been struggling as of late. They've had so many flops. Babylon's Fall is one. Shout out to the 5 people that are still playing that. Marvel's Avengers. Shout out to the 20 people that are still playing that. And we're talking even something like Outriders, which you said that we're going to keep, is a game that I look at. It's probably doing well, but it's probably not doing as good as they think it should be doing. But a decision like this maybe means that they're willing to invest a lot more into a game like Outriders and into franchises that they can turn into a game as a service. So one of the reasons why I would be concerned is that this probably means that we're going to see less AAA single player games from Square Enix moving forward. And it's great that we got the announcement of Kingdom Hearts 4. We know that they're working already on the next Final Fantasy, but I think Square Enix is kind of over uh, spending so much development money on a something that probably is not going to be a sure bet. And we could look at something like Strangers of Paradise as another example. And you can look at games like Chocobo, which they release in like a microtransaction arcade, um, as sort of indicators for what they're looking forward to in terms of probably what they're going to be releasing from now on. Another thing that I was seeing a lot online on Twitter after this announcement was, does this mean that Sony is now going to acquire this company? No. I think this is actually the opposite. I think this sale signals that Square Enix has no interest in selling a lot of their core business. I don't think that this means that Square Enix is just ready to let everything go. Although, honestly, if I was a shareholder for that company, I probably wouldn't be too happy about hearing that price point for this sale being at $300 million. It kind of sounds like Square Enix just wanted to get it off the books as quickly as possible and begin to move forward. But I actually don't think that this means that, Sony is now more interested in Square Enix because it's now cheaper. It looks a lot better to them. I'm a little surprised. I wonder if Microsoft was involved in this conversation because, man, that's once again that's just a steal, and maybe they had so much focus elsewhere, or maybe they weren't even interested at all. But no, I don't foresee that this is going to mean that Sony's going to scoop up Square Enix anytime soon. Um, then the other questions are what's going to happen to some of these franchises. So starting off with Tomb Raider, we already know what's going to happen with that game because it's already in development. Crystal Dynamics right now is working on this alongside working with Microsoft and finishing up Perfect Dark. I think the other thing that this might signal is the end of Marvel's Avengers. So Crystal Dynamics was the development team to that and for that, excuse me. And if this is Square Enix's intent to sort of move away from Western development and rely more on their Japanese company, then I think that means the end for Marvel's Avengers. I'm sure that Square Enix is more than happy to make that happen, unless there is some sort of contractual obligation. I think what this means is not that the Avengers game is going to completely shut down tomorrow, but it means that there probably won't be any more hero updates or any major updates to the game. But obviously, we'll kind of have to wait and see. The other game that they mentioned was Thief, and this is an interesting one because of everything that they bought and the IP that they brought up. This game will probably be the biggest risk, but also on top of that, I feel like it is a game that, if it is properly done, it can be revitalized. But it would take, I think, a pretty big marketing budget to make a new Thief work, as opposed to Deus Ex. Now, this is a game that would absolutely be uh, kind of at the top of my list a little bit if I am Embracer Group in terms of the next thing that Idols Montreal should be working on. It's pretty obvious at this point that there probably won't be a sequel to that Guardians of the Galaxy game. Commercially, it didn't do well, and now after this sale, with Eidos handling that development, that will basically mean that Embracer Group would have to strike a brand new deal with Disney for that for the rights to Guardians of the Galaxy, and then on top of that, that also means that you can't use the same, like it can't be a continuation unless you strike a deal with Square Enix. So it's just too messy. I just don't see a sequel to that happening. Maybe Marvel was still happy with Guardians of the Galaxy and Embracer Group can get something else for the Idols Montreal team. Honestly, they did such an amazing job. I would love to see them tackle something else. But honestly, Deus Ex would be a really, really good bet. It's never been this huge, gigantic commercial success, but I feel like it's a type of game right now in this current climate that would do really, really well in the right hands. Another one is Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver being one of them. And what's interesting is that not too long ago we heard about a rumor of this game being remade. So it is possible that something like that will still see the light of day. Now, what else did Embracer Group purchase in those 50 games? And honestly, there's probably a bunch of stuff in there that's going to probably be locked in the vaults forever. But some of the ones I found kind of interesting when I was looking through them, number one, Fear Effect. I don't know if anyone remembers Fear Effect for PlayStation, but honestly, this kind of would be something I would look into if I was Embracer Group. And mind you, remember, now they own the intellectual property. So it could be something that even if Idols Montreal is not the team working on it, they can still just give the game to one of the other hundreds of studios that they have. Another interesting one is Gex. And this was a trademark that was actually, what do you call it? I don't want to say remade, but reapplied. Square Enix reapplied for the Gex trademark. I believe it was last December when we discovered it. Also, honestly, a Gex game, I think it would work. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I actually think a Gex game would work in the right hands. Just don't let Chris Pratt do the voice. And then another one that I hope that they acquire was Kanan Lynch. Look, this was a short-lived game. There was only two of them. I love Kanan Lynch. I thought this was one of the best games, one of the best third-person shooters. Just an amazing story. I would love if they would bring this game back. And I kind of hope that they got Sleeping Dogs, but like I said, I kind of doubt it. That game is too good to only exist, to only have one of them exist. I really, really hope that they got their hands on it because that's definitely a franchise I would look to revitalize. So, look, in summary, I've spoken about this before. I'm not a huge fan of the consolidation in gaming, but I feel like this one's kind of different because we're not talking about a particular platform holder buying it. Honestly, if the news came out today that Microsoft, Xbox, or PlayStation bought these, I would actually be more upset. I've said this before. I'm not a fan of locking down exclusivity just for locking it down sake. I'm the type of person that, everyone has $1,000 to be buying two separate systems right now. And I wish that every game was available on every single system. Actually, if you toss in Switch on there, it's over $1,300, right? So this is a little bit different because this is more of like a business, like purely business transaction. Embracer Group feels that these intellectual property and these teams will be able to pay back those $300 million and then some. Although obviously it's going to take some time before we see something like that. But the other thing that I want people to remember is that now they own these intellectual properties as a whole. So there's always been talks about doing another Tomb Raider film. Even though I've said in the past, I think that franchise would work better as a TV show. So now that's something that's on the books. A Deus Ex film or TV show, even animated, I think would do really well. But all in all, I actually think this was good for both sides. It's obvious that Square Enix wants to go into a different direction. I think it's good that they get rid of that weight that they no longer want to carry. Reminds me a little bit of what Konami did. And Embracer Group comes out winning because I think they got these amazing teams for cheap. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Comment down below. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Like the video if you liked it. If you hated it, like it anyway. It's only gonna take you a second. And tune into the Camp Koji podcast. I'll be talking about this again on next Monday's episode. You can download it on your favorite podcast platform. And that's it. Thank you for watching.